Okay. So you let me know when we begin the discussion.
Yeah, go ahead.
Begin? Okay. Okay. All right. I'm gonna start with a mantra to help us continue to invoke an auspicious, purified atmosphere in our association this evening. This is a mantra from the Ancient Vedas. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for inviting me into this discussion. So we're going to read from a book, Bhagavad-Gita, as it is. First time I read Bhagavad-Gita, it was the summer of 1983, when I was just 2 or 3 years old. Actually, I was 22 years old. Okay. And I was actually in the summer of 83, it was after I had gotten my Bachelor's of Science degree in psychology from Penn State University, and I was backpacking around Europe. Staying at youth hostels. And I visited an ashram outside of Florence, Italy for about 2 weeks. And I read Bhagavad Gita as it is, cover to cover. From Italy, I took a boat to Greece, from Greece to the Middle East, Haaretz Yisrael, to Israel. And I ended up staying about 7 or 8 years of my life in Israel. So that I kind of had to admit to myself at that time, I was 22 years old, that this is, from what my intellect could see, this is like the most compelling, consistent, rational philosophy that I've been exposed to, and still is. And then I decided, because the book gives not just a philosophy that, from what I can tell, makes sense, it also gives like a lifestyle one can practice to experience and verify the truths that the philosophy delineates. So I started with some seriousness practicing this process called bhakti yoga that's described in Bhagavad Gita. I actually started practicing it during my years in Israel. So there's 700 verses in the book, 700 texts. We're reading from chapter 15, entitled The Yoga of the Supreme Person, text 8, chapter 15, text 8. And the Sanskrit, the book is originally in the Sanskrit, and then Bhaktivedanta Swami, he translated and purported into English. The Sanskrit reads, Shariram yadavapnoti yachtapyut kramadishvara grihit vaitani samyati vayorgandani vashayat. Translation: the living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Now, in Srila Prabhupada's purport, he writes, here, the living entity is described as Ishvara, the controller of his own body. If he likes, he can change his body to a higher grade, and if he likes, he can move to a lower class. Minute independence is there. The change his body undergoes depends upon him. At the time of death, The consciousness he has created will carry him on to the next type of body. If he has made his consciousness like that of a cat or dog, he is sure to change to a cat's or dog's body. And if he has fixed his consciousness on godly qualities, he will change into the form of a demigod. And if he is in Krishna consciousness, he will be transferred to Krishna Loka in the spiritual world and will associate with Krishna. It is a false claim that after the annihilation of this body, everything is finished. The individual soul is transmigrating from one body to another, and his present body and present activities are the background of his next body. One gets a different body according to karma, and he has to quit this body in due course. It is stated here that the subtle body, which carries the conception of the next body, develops another body in the next life. This process of transmigrating from one body to another and struggling while in the body is called karshati, or struggle for existence. Now, before continuing our discussion, I'm gonna state a few more mantras to continue to invoke a spiritual auspicious mood. I've used this word mantra. Mantra, like the English word mind, comes from the Sanskrit word mana. That's the first syllable in mantra. And tra means to extricate or to liberate, to free, to deliver. So the term mantra has become pretty well known throughout the world over the past decades. The actual meaning of mantra is sound vibration that frees the mind from illusion and supports the self to turn towards the self in self-awareness, and supports the self to turn towards source in an attitude of devotion. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayamrupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Shariram Yadavapnoti Yachapyut Kramadishvaram Grihit Vetane Samyati Vayurgandani Vashayat. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aromas. So this is a text that describes some fundamental principles of what's called transmigration. In more common language, transmigration is called reincarnation. Sometimes we hear, I don't believe in transmigration or reincarnation. I believe after this body dies, we either go to heaven or hell. So sometimes I respond, so it sounds like you do believe in transmigration. Because the essential principle described here is that, it's described earlier in Bhagavad-Gita. Dihinosmin yata dehe komaram yovanam jara tata dehantara praptir dirastatra namuyate. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from childhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at the time of death. The principle is that we've all experienced that our body changes, and but there's some constant identity, right? A thought exercise we all yes, a thought exercise we sometimes do is we'll ask, imagine that you're looking at a photograph of yourself from when you were 5 years old. Now, if you're looking at a photograph of yourself, now, when I look at that photo from when I was 5 or 6, do I say, who is this person? Who is this stranger? No, I say, that's me. That's David when I was 5. You say, that's Laura when I was 5. That's Marie. That's Carolyn. That's Jeff. That's Rebecca. Okay. Now, we know from basic science, we know from chemistry, that there's not one molecule, not one atom in our bodies now that was there when we were in the 5-year-old body. Still, there's some constant identity that I call David or Dominique or Anne. There's some constant identity. That indicates that that identity is something completely non-physical. Call it antimatter, call it soul, whatever, but it's that's like empirical evidence that it's something completely non-physical, this entity that I call David. And so then this, let's call it the irreducible quanta of consciousness that was in the 5-year-old body, and then the teenage body, the body of in the 20s, 30s. This body, more precisely, this body recently turned 60. So, see, we can say, yeah, the body has grown, but that's not true. That's not true, right? It's not like, yeah, well, the atoms that were there in the 5-year-old body, they got bigger. No, there's not one atom, not one molecule. It's completely changed. It's completely changed. So, okay. So then what we commonly call death is, in a sense, simply, this is philosophy, it's simply another change of body, just like from babyhood to toddler, from toddler to 10-year-old boy or girl to teenager. So at the time we call death is another change of body. And just as that atomic unit of sentience that is the actual self that continues on from childhood to youth to old age, so also at the change called death, the soul, the soul continues on. And so if someone says, no, I believe we go to heaven or hell, basically we're saying, okay, if I was bad, then I'll get a body and I'll suffer and burn in hell. And if I was good, then I'll go to heaven and I'll have a body there where I'll get to enjoy like anything. I mean, that's kind of the conception. So the idea is that when this body is finished, then the soul will get another body to enjoy or suffer. That's the basic principle here. It's just a lot more nuanced. It's just a lot more nuanced. That the principle is, according to the consciousness we develop in this body, then that consciousness at the change of body we call death, that consciousness will take us to the next body. I was in 2014, I was invited to give a keynote presentation at a conference. It was in a place called Golden, Colorado. And it was a series of, it was veterans hospitals. And so the audience was mostly all medical professionals, doctors, nurses, some psychiatrists, a few social workers, mostly medical professionals. And so I started the presentation. I said, let's say someone comes to you and says, I've hurt my finger. Now, in that simple phrase, my finger, there are two entities. There's the finger and there's the owner of the finger. So I asked them, the doctors, the nurses, I asked them, who do you treat? Do you treat the finger or the owner of the finger? And they sat there. Most of them looked kind of stunned. The director of the hospital system, he was there, and he said, well, David, that's kind of a simple question. But we've never really thought about it. So I went and I said, well, it's an important question, because the finger essentially is made of the same stuff as this table or that window shade. It's dead matter. Importantly, there's no healing potency in the dead matter. The healing potency is in that irreducible quanta of consciousness that animates the body. We can say, at some point the body dies, and obviously that's true for all of us. In a more precise sense, and I don't mean to be morbid here, actually the body is already dead. It appears to be alive because we, the spirit soul, that atomic unit of sentience, is inside. Just like if there were visitors from an alien planet and they observe this planet, they might say, oh, there's all these living entities. Some of them are called Mercedes-Benz, and some of them are called Renault, and some are called Chevrolet, and like that. And sometimes these living entities, they're infested with parasites, who are, I guess, those are the human beings. But actually, the vehicle, whether we drive a Toyota or a Honda or a Dodge, the vehicle only appears to be animated and alive because the driver's inside. Okay, I know things are changing now, they have remote control, but just to get the philosophical analogy. So, okay, but even then with the remote control, it's still, because there's a living person, that's why the car appears alive, whether the living person's sitting in the driver's seat or not. Okay, so, all right, so there's two types of energy we're talking about here. Bhumira po nalovayu kamana buddha evacha ahankara mityame bina prakritir astada. Material energy comprised of earth, water, fire, air, ether, material mind, material ego, material intelligence. Apare mitastranyam jiva bhuta sanatana. That prakritim vidimepram. That yayedam, and then there's this. The spirit soul, the spirit soul. That's like to use that analogy, like there's the driver and the car, there's the finger and the owner of the finger, there's the car and there's the driver of the car. So this is very important. It's very important because it relates to who I am and what's the illusion of who I am. Just like, okay, let's say, the purpose of metaphor or analogy is to get something real, like easy for us to understand, to help us understand something that's more subtle and difficult. So let's say if I clean the car, I take it to a car wash 3 times per week, and I make sure that the fluids are filled, and whatever else someone does, like I guess they get car detailing. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Good. Okay. So right. So okay, I take care of the car real good, and I make sure the windshield fluid, whatever people do to take care of cars. Clearly, it's not my field. Okay. So anyway, all right. But then, and I think, wow, I'm really in good shape. I'm clean. But then maybe someone comes along and says, well, Dave, it looks like you haven't had a sip of water for 3 days. And it looks like you haven't fed yourself, and you haven't taken a bath or a shower for a month. And you go, no, I just went through the car wash. And you go, yeah, but that's not you. It's important to take care of the car. We don't want to neglect the car, but that's not you. So similarly, we spend so much time and energy, caring for the vehicle, the body, analogously is like the vehicle. What's it mean to nurture, to feed, to nourish that irreducible quantum consciousness that is the driver of the vehicle of this body currently called David Wolf. So this points to kind of the essence of Bhagavad-Gita, which is the essence of the ancient wisdom tradition called the Vedas. Veda, just like the English word video, to see, comes from the Veda. Veda means knowledge. So yeah, so this process, well, I guess I'm thinking to emphasize, these are universal principles, okay? Like, this isn't about, am I a Buddhist, or am I a Jew, am I a Muslim, am I a Christian, am I a Hindu, am I a Hare Krishna? I don't regard myself as a Hare Krishna or like that. So I identify myself as someone who's aspiring to practice a science of self-realization called Bhakti Yoga. A synonym for Bhakti Yoga is Krishna consciousness. A science means it's based on universal principles. Just like, let's call it a relative truth might be, I am David Wolf. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm 60 years old. So that's a relative truth. But was I David Wolf from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania 100 years ago? Was I David Wolf from Philadelphia? Will I be David Wolf from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania 1 billion years from now? And these spans of time, billion years, trillion years, that's not even a lightning flash for the eternal spirit soul that passes from one body to the next, even within this. See, that's the point we're kind of making, that this verse makes. Even within this body, we're experiencing transmigration of the soul. It's a universal principle. It doesn't, yeah, but what if someone's a Jew? What if someone's black? What if someone's white? What if someone's from Connecticut or Texas? What if someone is a Republican or a Democrat, or someone's Chinese or a woman or a man? No, these are universal principles. The body changes and there's some constant identity. So that's something that attracted me going back to when I was first studying this philosophy, that it's universal, non-sectarian. I know I resided for 7-8 years in the Middle East, mostly Israel, also visited Egypt, like that. And I conducted a lot of educational programs based on this process of Bhakti Yoga. And at our programs, we had, we used to do Harinam Sankirtan in the streets of Nazareth, not Nazareth, Pennsylvania, Nazareth, Israel. And the nuns from the convent of the Italian sisters, and the nuns from the Church of the Annunciation, they would come and they would join us in chanting the names of the Supreme. Beautiful. Yeah. And so we would have Muslims and Jews and those who identified as non-theists and secular, and our emphasis, it's not about become a this. It's not about, it was never convert or something. It's like, okay, you're practicing Muslim, you're a secular humanist. Integrate the principles, the universal principles of Bhagavad-Gita in your life, and we trust you'll become a more satisfied, more fulfilled, more divinely inspired Muslim or Jew or secular humanist or Christian or however one identifies. These are universal principles. And yeah, and so when I use the term, I'm aspiring to practice this science of self-realization. I could say I practice the science of self-realization, or I do it, but practice means I'm not seeing myself as good at it, even though I'm at it for 40 years. And so I'm enthusiastically practicing each day. And science, like basic components of science. One is a hypothesis that's rational. And so, again, based on my study and my capacity for intellectual analysis, all of the assertions in this treatise of Bhagavad-Gita, like I would say, back then in the summer of '83, I wasn't, as far as I was aware, I wasn't looking for God or spirituality. I was just like but I was always interested in processes that actually created, well, always, at least from the age of 18 years old, interested, excited about processes that created actual transformation of heart. And so the hypothesis made sense. All of the assertions, a few of which we're just touching on today in our discussion. And then science also means an empirical experiment that one can do to have an experience, to test whether the assertions of the hypothesis are true. Just like we could show on paper the chemical algebra equation, 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen make water. And so some say, well, I still don't believe it. I think that's your dogma. You say, well, you don't need to believe. It's not about belief. You can go into the laboratory, mix the hydrogen and oxygen, and see if you get the same results as so many chemists over the ages. See for yourself. So that's what I mean, a science of self-realization, a process we get to practice to, okay, in terms of like where we visited the first part of this talk, that I'm practically experiencing that, and I've been practicing for almost 40 years, that to the extent that I give myself to this process, I'm experiencing myself as the driver of the car, as the owner of the finger. And that's important because, again, in dead matter, as long as I'm identifying with dead matter, there's no joy there. There's no joy, there's no bliss, there's no vibrancy. It's actually depressing. And to the extent that I'm actually, not just theoretically, actually experiencing myself as a spirit soul and engaging in the activities that atomic unit of sentience naturally engages in clear consciousness, then the nature of the driver of the car is opposite of the nature of matter. Matter is intrinsically temporary and not conscious, and a source of misery. And the nature of the owner of the finger is intrinsically blissful, eternal, powerful, loving. So it's not just abstract philosophy, it makes a practical difference in my experience of self, my experience of life, my experience of relationship. And then, okay, so then as far as maybe in our closing minutes, I'll just mention a few things, and then I'm glad to hear from others. Any comments or realizations you'd like to share or questions? So the process, there's some, well, a term used in Bhagavad Gita is regulative principles of freedom. So the idea that this is in terminology we sometimes use, this is a get to. It's not like, oh, I can't eat meat or smoke. That's not the spirit. Okay. So the spirit is, I'm dedicating my life to cultivate the consciousness of who I really am as the owner of the finger and not the material body. Again, the material body, not to be neglected. We want to take care of the car. It's an important vehicle on our journey. At the same time, in taking care of the car, I don't want to fall into the illusion that I am this Toyota, right? So I want to cultivate that consciousness. And there are some basic guidelines, some basic habits I can cultivate that support me in that. And that's a real foundation for joyful self-realization. And there are some other habits I can cultivate that will alienate myself from myself. And so that's what these regulative principles, that's what an example Bhaktivedanta Swami uses, we often use, just like, okay, so let's say if I want to drive from Alachua, Florida to Connecticut. Okay, so just say, for example, all right, so then I can say, okay, well, today I feel free. I'm like an independent free man. So today, if I feel like driving on the left side of the road, like going up 95, going up I-95, I-10 to get to Jacksonville, I might just drive on the left side because I'm free. And like, if I'm in a town and there's a red light today, that red light for me today is going to mean go very fast because that's who I am. I am a free man. Now, we understand that if I use or misuse my freedom in that way, drive on the left, go fast at a red light, it means my freedom will be constrained in a hospital or a morgue or in prison or with a big debt to pay to the government. Right? So actually, it's not like, oh, I have to drive on the right. I have to stop it. No, it's like, I'm very glad for the rules of the road. I'm very happy about the rules of the road. That I'm glad to follow the regulative principles of driving. Drive on the right. I'm glad that everyone else does too, and stop at a red light and stop sign. I'm glad because following those rules that supports me. That helps me to achieve my destination of getting to Connecticut. Like it's not like, oh, it's like a burden. So it's similarly that like our goal is the self-realization, supporting the self to turn towards itself and self-discovery, supporting the self to turn towards the supreme in the spirit of devotion. So there's certain habits, certain guidelines that are helpful, and certain habits that get in the way, like that. And and like one, certainly a cornerstone of the process. I know you're all familiar with a cornerstone of the process, like at the beginning of our program today at 6 o'clock. First Jonah and then Rebecca led us in singing the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's described in the Ancient Vedas. Idi Shoda Shakam Nam Nam, Kali Kalmasha Nashanam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That especially in this current age, which is called Kali Yuga, the most recommended process for self-realization, for realizing who we are as the driver and not the car, is chanting this mantra. There are several reasons given why, but whatever we understand about the reasons or not, it's an experiment we can do. An experiment we can do. It was that summer of 1983, also when I read Bhagavad-Gita, also that summer, I started experimenting with chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra with some discipline, in a regulated way, at least 16 rounds per day on beads like that. So it's an experiment that I started doing back 38 years ago or so, and I'm continuing to be very satisfied with the results. So I'm continuing with more and more enthusiasm each year of my life, and that's why I appreciate and love so much the opportunity to share and discuss this philosophy, this practice, this lifestyle. Just like the word mantra has become very well known throughout the world, the word yoga has become also well known. So we've used that term in this brief talk, bhakti yoga, mantra yoga. Like the English word yoke, it comes from the Sanskrit yoga. Yoga means to connect. In its essential sense, yoga means the self connecting with itself and connecting with the divine in the spirit of devotion. And so mantra yoga, it's self-realization and God realization through transcendental sound vibration. So we've touched on just a few aspects of the philosophy given in the Ancient Vedas as summarized in Bhagavad-Gita as it is. The verse we read today, chapter 15, text 8, reads, Shariram yadavapnoti achchapyut kramadishram grihit vetani samyati vayurgandani vashayat. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Hare Krishna, thank you for your presence and attention. I welcome if anyone would like to share any comments or ask any questions at this time.
Thank you. I wanted to share that whenever you were speaking about if I'm identifying with the dead matter, there's like no joy there. It's depressing like that. And I think previously I would have a reaction, like before this past year or so, I would have a reaction of like, well, no, it's not depressing. There's joy, but now, and even this trip, you talk about driving to Connecticut. I mean, our car broke down on the way to Connecticut. We had to get a rental car. And, I don't know what's going to happen with the car. So, it's like, I don't have a house. I don't have a car. I lost some of my employees recently, like, house, car, job is like for a man. I mean, what else is, just materially speaking, it's kind of like, what is there? But then whenever you speak, at the same time, I feel like I have so much. Like, I think about if I didn't have, this process and all these things were happening, you can't get a house, we're in this camper, we're, everything's crazy. I don't have a car, it's just like, well, what do I have? I don't have anything. But it's like the opposite. I feel like, well, I have so much, and the most important things, in life, I'm full with those. I have so much of those. So it stood out to me, in hearing whenever you were sharing that part, that it was like, oh yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's depressing. Things break down, things don't work right. Things fall through, things fall apart. They break down. They disappointing things happen. Expectations are broken. So many things. Things happen at the wrong time, but it's like with this process, like when you say connecting with something that's eternal, that's not changing, then it's not affected by those things. So that stood out to me that you were sharing.
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate what you express. I may have smiled a bit when you shared, but I know that there's a lot of pain and sorrow and grief and suffering in what you're sharing, and it's kind of like if we don't laugh, we'll cry, sort of thing. So, and I'm hearing in your sharing, there's also joy. There's also a lot of joy in what you're sharing, that you're seeing your own spiritual growth over the past years, even in the past year, in your fuller realizations of some of these basic principles. And your spiritual growth has been catalyzed by some material miseries coming at you from so many directions. And so, what you express, Patrick, I'm very touched and moved by what you express. And it points to such a key principle that, it's described in the 5th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita. Yehi samsparshaja boga dukkha yonaya evate dyantavanta konteya nate shuramate Buddha. It's described there that a wise person doesn't make their goal of life what's called the contact of the senses with the sense objects. Why? Because such material gratifications have a beginning and an end. And as eternal spirit souls, will never be fulfilled with that. Now, the principle doesn't say, so if material happiness comes your way, reject it. No. The idea is to direct our lives for that sort of happiness and fulfillment that will never be crushed by time, never be devastated by time. And that's achieved through this process of bhakti yoga. In the course of that, there will sometimes be material happiness and sometimes material distress. Matras parshas tukantia shitoshna sukadukada agama painonichas tams titikshas vibharata. There will sometimes it's a nice day, sometimes it's a rainy day, sometimes it's fine health, sometimes the pandemic strikes us, sometimes people honor us and compliment us, sometimes people insult us heavily, right? So on the material level, there's going to be happiness and distress. Even if we make our goal to minimize distress and maximize the happiness materially, the distress will come. Some people will honor us, some people will insult us. Sometimes our fitness and health is strong, sometimes not. Sometimes the economics is up, sometimes it's down. Okay, so not to reject material happiness, but to continue steadily to cultivate that joy, that bliss that is not dependent on anything material, on any pandemic or economic situation, or anyone approving of us or disapproving of us. And so I hear, Patrick, you and your family, recent months, years, you're experiencing some pretty severe hardships, and you're at the same time you're feeling blessed, you're feeling abundant, you're feeling rich. There's a saying, rich is not he who has the most, it's he who needs the least. And so I'm hearing from that point of view, you're experiencing yourself getting richer and richer as your life goes on, and you appreciate, like you feel like this is a special gift you've got in this process of bhakti yoga.
Yes, thank you. And just also, I was speaking with Rebecca just maybe yesterday or the day before, and just kind of just experiencing, like I said, I think this is this process, this last few months or whatever, has been an opportunity to experience these, principles, act in real time, and I know often we talk about how, resisting reality versus accepting reality, and especially the material reality, like say things fall apart, things break down, that's the material context. And it seems, I know this is philosophically true, and then experientially, experiencing that most of frustration and suffering comes from expecting that things are going to be easy and things are going to go as planned, and things should be easy. It shouldn't be like this. It should be easy. I should get this. I should get that. This should come to my way. This person shouldn't treat me that way. All these, expectations that things should just be easy and nice. And, once we come to the, reality, and I've kind of been forced to do that in this past year of like, no, things, life is hard. Things don't go your way. And like the more you can just, accept that, then it's actually easier, that life is hard. And that if we think it's going to be easy, then life is really hard. But if we accept that life is hard, then it becomes easier. And so just actually experiencing that, and the principle of surrender, a few things that have like stood out are like the idea of like surrendering to what comes automatically and being satisfied with that. And there's just so much. It's like a simple thing, but because what else can I do, really? I mean, it's like, it's simple in one way, because what else can I do? I mean, I can only take what's available, or I can only accept what's available to me. If it's not available, I can't make myself get it. So it's such a simple thing to just take what's available and just be satisfied with it. But it's so hard to do actually in life. So, but I've been experiencing that more, just surrendering to what's available, to what's coming my way, and being satisfied with it. And that's been like, like I said, without that, I mean, what would I have without that? So that's been really supportive.
I'm going to share something.
Carolyn.
About 2 years ago, I had a back problem and went to a friend who did some examination. And of course, at the time, I had also broken my left foot trying to ride a bicycle. That's when I realized at 72 years old, I better hang that little portion of my life up. And my husband was extremely supportive, and I was devastated because I'm a very active person. But at the same time, that accident served as a blessing for us because the orthopedist that I went to also took an x-ray of my husband's back. He's always suffered severely with back problems. And we discovered that there was an enormous amount of calcification around his heart. And after multiple tests, and after getting a calcification test, the doctor came out to talk to my son Chris and me and said that he was so happy with the results. And I thought, oh, this is good. But what he said to us really was pretty devastating. Jeff had 4 ventricles that were very clogged, 99%, 95%, 89%, and 85%. He was walking around with what is called widowmaker. The doctor said, take him home for 2 weeks, we're going to get him in for surgery. At that point, I said, no, we're going to keep him in the hospital, please. I think that I would feel more comfortable doing that. And obviously, he's okay. And we recently celebrated our 50th anniversary, which was probably far more meaningful to us because of what we went through. But also we realized how lucky we were, not materialistically, but how lucky we were to have Rebecca and Patrick. Rebecca got on a plane. Rebecca does not like to fly, and she came home immediately. Our son and our daughter-in-law were phenomenal. We just, as a family, just came together in support. And to me, after that, that was it for me. I would still like my husband to renovate my bathroom, but I know that's not really important in the whole scheme of things.
In my next life, I'm going to come back as a plumber.
Oh, that'd be good. But anyway, that's through what you were saying, it just sort of encapsulated the past 2 years for us. And I, am so very grateful for, in my case, the dear Lord, God, for for saving my husband's life, and for the very talented doctors and medical people that we could not have survived without, and also for the love of our family. So,
I'd like to add that, over the years, we've all known people. In some cases, we've seen people who've been, let's say, remarkably successful, where they seem to be really happy and doing very well and so forth. And for some people, they can look at people who are in that particular light and be somewhat envious of them and say, geez, my life's not so great. But what I've learned from knowing a lot of people and knowing them well enough to know the pluses and minuses that they've experienced, that the people who really look happy and successful are the people who really know how to convince you that they're happy and successful, and that they, everybody has a ticket to punch, and we've got challenges as we go through life. Some of them are devastating. There's always some that are going to be devastating, and there's always there's a cluster, as Rebecca and Patrick are going through, where it seems like every time they turn around, something's happening. We've gone through that.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, it's kind of a rite of passage when you get married and you have a family. It's like, okay, hit me. It's time.
We rolled pennies to
yeah,
survive.
Yeah.
We had a jar out on the counter so that they could help us buy Huggies, diapers, which were only, by the way, $5.99 for like 45 of them, except and you think about it now how expensive they are. But we were happy. We didn't even realize how happy we were until now.
Now we're delirious.
Now we're delirious. No, but I still want that bathroom.
Yeah.
So that's I just very appreciative of the points you made, because I think it really hit home.
Again, I have to stress the fact that if you're, feeling sorry for yourself, and it's not difficult to do when the whole world seems to be dropping in your lap and on your head, and you're looking around at other people in envy, you have to realize that they've gone through the firestorms too, to some extent or another. And life isn't easy. And for me, being successful with waking up in the morning and trying again the next day, it's like when I went in for my open heart surgery, and it was like they had me on the gurney, taking me in the operating room, and I said to myself, well, I hope I open my eyes to see the ceiling, in the recovery room. That was my goal for being happy. And 8 or 9 hours later, I opened my eyes, there was a ceiling, and I had half the plumbing in the hospital down my throat. Thank God they removed it. But I had a remarkable recovery. I had, like Carolyn pointed out, a phenomenal heart surgeon and a whole team that worked with me. And it was like, you couldn't ask for anything better. And it was just absolutely remarkable the way everything came together. And we've had times when we've said, something's bothering us, something's bad. And then we look back and say, look at all the blessings we've had and how lucky we've been. And those wonderful experiences overshadow the dark ones. So where are we on that? There's the signal.
Let me get it. I want to get it.
Carolyn and Jeff, I'm personally very moved and touched by your sharing philosophically and personally. Yes, that I'm hearing that, that in the material hardships around health, that you're seeing the blessings, like clearly the way you described, the way your story unfolded with your injury, Carolyn, and then what was discovered, about your heart, Jeff, and like it sounds really, there was definitely some higher powers got involved there.
Yeah.
And you're knowing, not just feeling, you're knowing you're blessed, and that's, for me, that's like real spiritual consciousness, that in the disturbances of life, suffering, disturbances, miseries, you're seeing and taking advantage in a positive way of the opportunity to realize what's most essentially important, what's superfluous, and what's most essentially vital. And you've responded to to the great challenges in that way. And from my point of view, that's real spiritual consciousness. I'm reminded there's the book, The Road Less Traveled by the psychiatrist M. Scott Peck. And he's he's a psychiatrist, and the first three, he starts his book with a 3-word sentence. He starts his book with the sentence, "Life is difficult." And then he goes on to say, once one accepts that life is difficult, then it no longer matters that life is difficult. Because then the goal isn't to fix the difficulty so it's not difficult. No, accepting life is difficult, and then the difficulties, sometimes very severe, the difficulties become a context in which we get to actually move towards the ultimate goal of life: self-realization, meaningful exchange, developing love for God, taking off the masks, supporting others to take off the mask, to live authentically. And then the difficulties become an impetus for a truly meaningful life, going towards that which is not dependent on whether the difficulties are more or less severe in a particular day. I'm very inspired by the sharing of both of you. Thank you, Jeff and Carolyn.
Thank you for validating also how we feel. It's important to us, very important to us. I do want to add just a little aside, because we're very proud of this factor. When we got married 50 years ago, on our honeymoon, we met a couple
In a limousine.
Going to New York to get on a plane to go to Acapulco, Mexico.
It was safe back then.
Yes, it was safe back then. And so that friendship still exists. And those are the people that we celebrated our 50th anniversary with. We were married on the same day, at the same time, and we didn't even know it, but Barbara, my friend, and I graduated from college sitting 10 seats away from one another, and we didn't even know it. At the graduation. So this was obviously, meant to be as well. And so, what we went through has just made so many things, that friendship, our family, our grandchildren, so vital and important to us that, we're very grateful for what we have materialistically also. We're very grateful, and that we can also be here for Patrick and Rebecca during this difficult time.
And Rebecca and our son Christopher grew up referring to them as Uncle Bob
and Auntie Barbara. That's our friends.
And they,
so,
wonderful.
we're just everything, the realizations keep on flooding us constantly. And to have a moment like this again is very meaningful, and I'll sleep better tonight because of it.
And I just want to say, Matt, this isn't sour grapes, but while we've been on this Zoom conference call, I've missed several Hollywood agent calls that have come in for me, but I'll get over it. It's a career breaker.
I appreciate your sharing and your sense of humor. Thank you, Jeff and Carolyn. Thank you. Very, very touching. All of these things that could not be coincidences, the way you shared them, that you living your life according to principles and guided by some higher guidance, clearly. Dominique.
It's been really nice to tune into this conversation. Thank you all for bringing me in. And it's really timely for me. Gaetano and we bought a new house, and he can't breathe easily in the house. He's very triggered by the air in the house, and we finally had a 4-hour assessment and consultation yesterday, and it is mold. It's like the whole house needs to be remediated, and also VOCs from the floor, most likely, like chemical fumes, and it's just a really extensive remediation about this new house, and we didn't know it would happen, and it's relieving to finally have a clear like diagnosis that we got yesterday. And it's so much to coordinate, and we were sitting down, like the children, like I don't know, my friend called and said, can we take the kids to the springs? And I was like, yes, they need to get out, we need to like process this. So, but Gaetano and I, we sat down today to talk about like the details, because it's like the AC people that come under the house do this, and then the remediators and the price and the timing and like where we live, and we have to move all our stuff out of the house and live somewhere else, and it's just really complicated. So we were talking about it all, but then finally, like him and I just wanted to like switch the conversation to what does this mean like spiritually, or like what is the message here that God is, what is there something deeper here for us to look at or realize, like what is available spiritually in this situation? And it was like the conversation immediately felt much more enlivening, because it's like, this is the meaning of life. Like what, I'm like, I wanted to stay in that part of the conversation. Not that I don't want to take care of the home, but what's happening on the soul level. And we just talked it out. And my realization is that I don't want this experience to be another excuse to postpone my life purpose and what enlivens me and what inspires me. I don't want to postpone the percentage of time I want to spend on what enlivens me and what my spiritual practice is. I don't want to postpone any of that, any percentage of that. Like I want to keep my spiritual focus despite this whole upheaval. And Gaetano resonated with that. And I was feeling sort of attached, like I wanted him to agree, like, right, you're going to do your art and I'm going to do the thing, but my thing that, I did feel attached, like for him to agree, because I think that's important for him, and he did agree. So anyway, conversation's exactly what we're talking about here. Like life is just going to be difficult. And am I going to be swayed by that? Am I going to just postpone what really matters, or am I going to stay focused and not diminish the meaningful part of life just because life is difficult? Like, so that's my realization of the day, and it's like just wonderful to show up and connect on that topic with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominique. I appreciate, well, one thing I appreciate is that how you shared the quality, the nature, the experience of the conversation between you and your husband transformed. Whereas, well, the mold is still there and all that complex problems. But once you say, okay, what's the spiritual opportunity? What's the spiritual opportunity here in not to neglect the material problem, but what's the spiritual opportunity? Then the conversation went from like dread and depressing and anxiety to there's some joy emerging here. And you landed on, because you could easily, you and your husband, and you could easily get like, oh, we need to take care of this, and you could spend 18 hours a day, and then, well, there's no time for chanting the names of God. There's no time for doing my art, my life's passion. No time for that. We need to take care of this. But that's a rabbit hole you refuse to go down. That you'll respond to the challenges, and in responding to the challenges, you're going to maintain, maybe even increase, cultivating your eternal life. Thank you, Dominique. Marie, did you want to comment something?
Sorry, I'm not going to put my video on.
Okay.
And yeah, I wanted to comment about Patrick's everybody shared, and it was prompted by Patrick sharing about his situation and accepting reality. And I have my own situation. It's not a house situation. I have a different house, the body situation. And yeah, it seems that accepting or fighting reality doesn't change the reality. And then since fighting reality is going to always be a losing battle, then in a sense we have no choice but accepting reality as it is. And then from that choice of accepting reality as it is, we can choose what we do with that. What we do, okay, there is a context. And what do I fill the context with? And Dominique was sharing, okay, there is a context to house is sick. And I'm choosing what do I want, like it's another level. Like there is accepting reality, and after there is choosing what I do with the reality. And from choosing what I do with the reality is choosing the spiritual perspective. Like earlier, Rebecca's parents were sharing about choosing to see those meetings and to see the serendipities, so the presence of God, or choosing to see as purifying, as something that's on purpose, or choosing to see the love, in fact, that nothing in this world is without love from God, regardless if it's open heart surgery, or a house that needs remedial measure, or no house, or that it's only love. Yes, that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you for sharing, Marie. Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate your sharing, Marie. What I'm getting from it is, kind of like nothing happens without the sanction of God, in a sense. Everything is given by God. And then you're sharing, for me, your sharing is about cultivating the consciousness to realize God's presence and opportunities to realize self-realization in God everywhere, and particularly in the apparent misfortunes. And for me, that relates to like that, an important distinction between acceptance and resignation. Resignation can be like, yeah, this is just the way it is, I'm stuck, it's hopeless. Whereas acceptance, particularly of the apparent misfortunes, acceptance is like a platform to enthusiastically seek opportunities for that God consciousness that you're talking about.
I would like to add something, David.
Thank you, Marie. Thanks for sharing. Laura.
I would like to say, I'm sorry if I jumped in, but I'm here to support Rebecca and Patrick and her parents, because I know how important it is to include your parents in what you're doing and what you believe and how you live your life and raise your children. I did share with Rebecca that my mother just passed away on Sunday. And in that, I brought my beads with me and my Krishna book for 3 months, but I didn't share that part of my life with her because she was so in love with Jesus and Mary. And not that that's an exclusion, I'm just sharing with everyone that I didn't bring that to my mother. So when I read that Rebecca, I think Dominique posted that Rebecca was bringing her parents to this Zoom meeting tonight, I responded that I'm going before I even read the message fully.
You just knew that you were meant to be here.
And I wanted to support Rebecca. I would support Anne's parents and Dominique's parents and David's parents and Marie's parents. If whoever's name was there, as soon as I read that someone was bringing their parents to Krishna consciousness, I was sitting going. I didn't know what was going to happen today or if I would get here on time, but the fact that I'm sitting here and everyone's on Zoom and, you know, feeling connected, and your parents have celebrated 50 years together. Patrick, we'll be sitting here in 50 years and Patrick and Rebecca will be going, we just celebrated our 50th anniversary and we'll be singing Hare Krishna too. So thank you for saying yes for me coming and for bringing your parents, Rebecca and Patrick, into this conscious, enlivening, and life-sustaining event.
Thanks for your sharing, Laura. And I hear, Laura, which I didn't understand 5 minutes ago. You're here at a very emotionally poignant time. Your mother left her body just 48 hours ago or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a very emotionally charged time for you. And just others might not know, it's not too often that Laura appears at our programs. I always feel
Lately.
I always feel your energetic support, but it's not too often you come. Sometimes a year could pass.
Yeah.
And so when you saw the occasion here, you knew you're meant to be here.
Mhm.
I appreciate your presence and sharing, Laura.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anne, and I also want to say that Laura, you and I are soul sisters, because I said the same thing to myself when I saw the event. I was like, my family needs to meet Rebecca and Patrick's family, so that's why I got Mom here, so she wanted to put her glasses on and to meet you and see you. My parents have celebrated 60 years of wedding bliss, and I'm in their home now, and so yes, we just have been listening and enjoying and sharing the experience with you. So I just wanted to say thank you for this evening and to be able to meet the entire family. I'm sorry I missed the beginning because I bet the kirtan was amazing. But if it's recorded, I definitely will listen to it. So thank you for tonight, and thank you for opening up your home and inviting us in.
Thank you for, my goodness, this has been more delightful than I thought it was going to be.
I really like Carolyn and Jeff. So that was nice to hear from you.
We have a little bit of a history with you, don't we? And, you know, my gosh. And we will keep you in our thoughts and prayers, Dominique, you and your family, during this time, because I know how difficult this must be, very devastating news, but also wonderful to hear that you're taking the high road on this, and you're gonna survive, and you know you will. So
You can always go back to what Nietzsche said: if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger.
right. Exactly.
Let's all pray for each other. We have plenty of
Yeah.
reasons.
I love seeing the boys. Oh my God, they've gotten so big. Beautiful children. Blessed.
Hey, Rebecca, what's happening for you?
Yeah, I know. I think I'm the only one who hasn't shared.
The organizer.
I'm just enjoying hearing from all of you, and I appreciated the class and hearing from Laura and Anne. Like, I feel like, when I was coming here as we were approaching to come to Connecticut, I just felt energized and inspired to just share a little piece of our community, and maybe a little bit more about Krishna consciousness, so that my parents might have more of an understanding of what Patrick and I and our family, what we're choosing and in our life, and and yes, when I heard Anne and Laura share, I felt, wow, this is definitely like there was like a bigger purpose around this that was bigger than just bringing, coming here to share with my parents. And so I feel fortunate to have listened to that, to listen to that energy and that inspiration. Even though it felt a little scary. Like if I felt a little scared because I feel a little vulnerable sharing this part of my. I know it's different than what I grew up. I grew up in a Italian, pretty much. I mean, Italian American Catholic home. So it felt a little uncomfortable sharing, but I'm glad that I did because I really feel like it benefited so many people. So I'm glad to be here with all of you.
Bottom line is that we love her, even though as a baby she drove us crazy. She was colicky, and I mean, we could tell you some real interesting stories about Rebecca, but we are so proud of her and her accomplishments, and proud of her marriage, and proud of her commitment. And so, although she knows that this is different from what we practice, we certainly are open. I'm assuming we're all praying to the same God. So we are just so thrilled to have them here. And we love them dearly. We love the two little boys who are watching television, just a tiny bit more. But that's it. But we just, we're very happy. We're very, very happy.
And the two boys are trying out for the U.S. Olympic eating team, and they're doing very well in the finals. Very well. But it's interesting, while we may have gone through life with different scriptures and different practices, different approaches to religion, I think judging from this presentation and knowing our children, our family, there are a lot of life principles that we all share. We might have different labels on them or different sources, but we love people, and we love people who are nice people, and we love all you people. So I just want you to know,
that's what we came away
it doesn't
with.
matter what your religious background or philosophical background is. That's really what counts, I think. That's the common denominator.
Beautiful, beautiful sharing. Rebecca is very special, and clearly she came from very special parents. And yeah, thank you. And thank you for your sharing, Anne and Dominique and Carolyn and Jeff and Rebecca. Yeah, I really appreciating, I was appreciating 2 hours ago, and even more now that it was a stretch for you. This is a stretch for you, Rebecca. I have no doubt about that. And you surrendered yourself to be an instrument, and it's clear, an instrument for Krishna. Krishna is a name for God, just to take the mysticism out of it. For you surrender as an instrument, and God worked through you in ways that none of us here could conceive. And this is this experience, this joyful exchange of experience and how it unfolded is evidence for God's existence. I have no doubt about that.
Beautiful.
Anything else before we close? Any other comments or questions before we close?
I was just gonna suggest we could do a round of pearls before as we close.
Okay.
And you can explain what that is also.
Oh, you want me to explain?
A round of pearls.
Okay, yeah, so sometimes it's some of our gatherings. In the last 2 or 3 minutes, we close with what's called a round of pearls. A pearl is 1 or 2 words or a short phrase. So it's the principle of less is more. So it's not like a few sentences. A pearl is 1 or 2 words or a short phrase, something from our time together, from our 2 hours together that touched our heart, moved our soul, inspired us, stimulated our intellect, impacted us. So just in whatever order we want to go, we do 1 or 2 words or a short phrase. That's a round of pearls. So I like your suggestion, Patrick. We can let's close with a round of pearls, 1 or 2 words or a short phrase. And
Divine family connection.
divine family connection. Thank you, Anne.
So mine is universal connection.
Universal connection. Thank you, Patrick. Marie.
The power of the love of the parents for their children.
Power of love for parents, for children. Thank you, Marie. Jeff.
Life is good.
Could I hear that again?
Life is good.
Life is good. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for your pearl. My pearl is unity in diversity. Dominique.
Beautiful friends.
Beautiful friends. Thank you, Dominique.
And my word is gratefulness.
I would just like to hear that more clearly.
Gratefulness.
Grateful, gratitude. Thank you, Carolyn. Laura.
Believe.
Believe. Thank you, Laura. Believe. Thank you.
Divine inspiration.
Divine inspiration. Thank you, Rebecca.
Hare Krishna.
Very good. That was good.
Yeah. Thank you all for your association. I appreciate this special our special gathering of friends here. Thank you all for your presence and association. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, David. And
Good
God
night.
bless
Thank you.
all of us.
It was nice meeting everyone.
Very nice.
Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too.
Wish I could be there in Connecticut. It looks fun.
He was here too. That
Are
would
you
be
making-
fun.
Are you making delicious Italian vegetarian food?
I'm trying.
Eggplant veggie balls that are really good. Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking about. Like mom taking care of me.
Oh, yeah.
I like
I've
that.
been doing
story.
laundry.
And
I told you.
yesterday, in our 65-degree weather, I had to go in the freezer and break out a bag of snow for the boys to have a snowball
Yeah,
fight.
we throw snow.
Aw.
Speaking to me.